The air inside the Gorthax detainment complex was damp and metallic, humming with the low thrum of alien machinery and the ever-present scent of sterilized blood. Fluorescent strips cast a cold, flickering light across the narrow corridor as two towering Krell soldiers marched forward, dragging their newest prisoner. Her feet barely touched the floor. She didn't struggle. Dr. Elara Myles kept her gaze level, her breathing even, though her orange jumpsuit was torn and streaked with grime. Her hands were bound in a translucent alloy, something the aliens believed could hold her. She hadn't tested the theory. Not yet. The taller Krell glanced down at her. Its skin shimmered like burnished metal, and its voice clicked through a translator embedded in its throat. Human medic. Useless. Elara didn't respond. That was the 5th time she'd heard it since her capture. The Krell saw little value in a healer, even less in a human one. Her presence here wasn't a matter of interrogation or negotiation. It was punishment. They reached the final cell at the far end of the corridor. Unlike the others, this one had reinforced energy barriers and claw marks etched deep into the metal walls. Something massive shifted behind the shimmering force field. The guards paused, exchanging a few grunts in their native language. Then one reached for the control panel. "I hope she screams," the shorter one muttered as the barrier dissolved. The Krell shoved her forward. Elara stumbled across the threshold and into the den. The force field snapped back into place behind her with a resonant crack. The room was silent for a moment, except for the slow, calculated breathing of the creature now rising from the shadows. It was enormous. A wolf. No, something beyond a wolf. Standing nearly 2 meters at the shoulder, with blackened metal threading through its fur and long scars bisecting its flank like cruel calligraphy. Cybernetic plates bristled along its spine. Its eyes glowed faintly amber, but not mindlessly so. There was intelligence there. Hunger too. Elara didn't move. The beast growled, low and resonant, a sound that vibrated through the floor and up into her ribcage. Its lips peeled back, revealing rows of wet teeth and a jaw powerful enough to crush bone like pastry. The watching guards leaned forward, expectant. The creature lunged. It stopped inches from her. Hot breath brushed her cheek. The wolf's teeth hovered at her throat, but didn't bite. Instead, it inhaled. Once. Twice. Then its snarl broke. Confusion flickered in its golden eyes. Elara raised her bound hand slowly, not in fear but recognition. "Hello, Threx," she said softly. The beast blinked. Outside, one of the guards frowned and tapped the control pad, cycling through views on the monitor. "She didn't die," he muttered. "Why didn't she die?" Inside the cell, Elara crouched, slowly, knees brushing the stained metal floor. The wolf's head tracked her every movement. "I didn't know it was you," she whispered, and for the first time in days, her voice trembled, not with fear, but something like guilt. "They changed you." Threx gave a soft growl, low and uncertain. "You remember me," she said. It wasn't a question. She reached out her hand. The wolf's nose twitched, drawn forward. The moment hung suspended, fragile as frost. Then, without warning, Threx pressed his massive head against her palm, exhaling in a long, shaking breath. On the other side of the glass, alarms started to blink. The monitors stuttered. One showed a close-up of Elara's hand against the beast's head. Another showed Threx's vitals spiking erratically, then settling. "She's doing something," one of the Krell said. "That beast is bonded." "Impossible. She's just a medic," the other snapped. "Scan her again." The system confirmed the same results. Human, female, no visible enhancements. But Threx remained calm, almost submissive. Inside, Elara let her hand fall to her lap. "I thought you died," she murmured. "They said none of you survived." Threx huffed, a sound almost like sigh. Elara leaned back against the wall, exhausted but composed. "It's not over," she said, half to herself. They took you. They'll take more. Unless I stop them. Threx's ears twitched. He lowered himself beside her, curling his massive body protectively around her side. Outside, the guards watched in stunned silence as the deadliest creature in the entire complex, one that had torn through 6 prisoners and a dozen security drones, lay peacefully beside the human woman. She should be dead, the Krell commander hissed. But she wasn't. And deep within the system's sublayers, a dormant neural signal activated for the first time in years. One that hadn't been seen since the collapse of Project Helioward. A name flashed across a redacted file. Dr. Elara Myles. Status: deceased. Classification: alpha-level asset. Elara closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. Let them watch. Let them wonder. This was only the beginning. The silence inside the cell was deceptive. To the casual observer, it might have looked like a woman and a beast resting in a shared calm. But beneath the quiet, calculations ticked through Elara's mind like code, unraveling. Fast, precise, adaptive. She leaned against the wall, Threx's breathing a steady rhythm beside her, while her eyes scanned the faintly blinking lights embedded in his spine. They'd replaced more of him than she expected. Synthetic musculature under natural fur. Fluid conduits threaded with neural dampeners. None of it was original. None of it was humane. Elara's hand hovered over the circular port just above his right shoulder blade. She didn't touch it. Not yet. He wouldn't let her. Not until trust rerouted itself. She'd have to earn it all over again. Outside, boots echoed down the hallway, lighter than the Krell. A different gate. A different intent. Moments later, a new face appeared on the monitor mounted high in the corner of the cell. A lean-skinned alien with an elongated skull, layered with silver interface bands. Its eyes were black, lidless, and cold. Human, it said through the translator grid. You've interfered with a military specimen. This is a violation of interspecies biocontainment law. Elara didn't move. You modified a creature with sentience without consent. That's a violation of 3 intergalactic accords. She looked straight at the camera. Shall we keep counting? The alien tilted its head, unmoved. You will be sedated, dissected, and classified. Threx lifted his head, a guttural sound rumbling in his throat. Elara smiled thinly. Try. The screen cut out. Threx growled, low and troubled. Elara turned to him and rested a hand on his shoulder, fingers brushing fur and metal. They don't know what you are. What we are. Her tone dropped. They don't know what I made you capable of. He blinked slowly, recognition shimmering in his eyes like a half-buried star. Years ago, before the collapse of the frontier walls, before her name had been erased from every official log, Elara had led the Helioward Initiative, an experimental task force of genetically engineered apex hybrids paired with neural empathic handlers. The program was shut down after a failed mission left 3 human settlements in ruin and all handlers presumed dead. But some of the beasts had survived. She hadn't known which. Now she did. She tapped Threx's spine again, this time lightly. His ears twitched. There was a pulse beneath the metal. Faint, but there. They've locked your command matrix. But the core is still yours. I just need access. Threx didn't move away. A good sign. She closed her eyes and drew a breath. Beneath her skin, something stirred, an echo from another life. Embedded deep in her skull was a dormant translink node, once the anchor between her and creatures like Threx. They'd told her the implants were non-functional after the Helioward collapse, that the trauma had broken the link permanently. They'd been wrong. She focused on the node now, a cold coil in her mind's eye. It resisted at first. Then, slowly a spark returned. Threx flinched. His head snapped toward her, nostrils flaring. I know it hurts, she whispered, but I need you to let me in. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, with deliberate slowness, he lowered his head and pressed it gently to her chest. The link surged to life. Not words. Not thoughts, just sensation, raw, searing emotion, betrayal, pain, rage, then recognition, then the aching flicker of something else. Trust. She staggered from the force of it. Her head throbbed, but her vision stayed clear. The bridge was forming. Elara reached forward and pressed her fingers into the access port. Heat pulsed against her skin. She felt the limiter, foreign, crude, a Krell failsafe jammed into Threx's operating cluster. She mapped its design mentally. Primitive encryption. She'd seen worse in field medicine. She whispered a command in an ancient dialect, a sequence no alien translator would recognize. A click, then a low mechanical whine. Threx jerked, muscle spasming. His eyes flashed white, then dimmed, then blazed again, clearer this time. The snarl that followed shook the walls. But it wasn't mindless. It was controlled, focused. Elara backed off, giving him space. You're free. Not all the way, but enough. He turned to her, posture shifting. Not submissive. Equal. The intercom cracked again, panicked this time. Stand down. Do not tamper with the... Elara raised her voice, cutting through the static. Deactivate your surveillance, or your precious specimen brings down the entire cell block. Your call. No answer came. Just the sound of hasty voices in the background and alarms stuttering to life. She turned to Threx. That's our window. He bared his teeth, not at her, but toward the corridor beyond. The link between them was incomplete, but enough had returned. Enough to trust that what lay ahead wouldn't break them. At least not yet. Elara pulled herself to her feet, heart pounding, but her face impassive. There was no room for hesitation. The moment she stepped beyond this cell, the galaxy would remember the name Elara Myles. And they would remember what humanity had truly been working on all these years. She glanced once more at Threx, then nodded toward the far wall. We're going through. He responded with a low growl and took his position beside her, poised and waiting. A single, jarring pulse sounded as the force field shuddered. Elara's voice dropped to a whisper, meant only for him. They thought they locked me in here with you. She placed her hand gently on his flank. But it's the other way around. The lights flickered once more. Then darkness. The emergency lighting blinked to life, casting the corridor in a pulse of red shadows. Somewhere deep within the complex, the security grid rebooted. Too late. Elara stepped through the failing force field, as if it were a curtain of mist. Beside her, Threx moved like liquid muscle, his claws clicking softly against the metal floor. Every corner, every vent above them, whispered of surveillance. She counted the delay between pulses. For seconds. Enough. Her fingers danced over the panel outside the cell, pulling its access plate free with a twist. Inside, a tangle of cables and a gleaming data core. Her implant synced before she finished blinking. The node in her skull flickered again, locking briefly, then transmitting. A low hum passed through her bones. The message was short, compressed, directional, cloaked. A single burst aimed at the far edge of the system, to coordinates only one ship could interpret. She hoped they were still listening. Behind her, Threx gave a short growl. Elara didn't need translation. Something was coming. She closed the panel, replaced the plate, and straightened. I didn't expect rescue, she said, mostly to herself. But I'm not dying here. Footsteps. Heavy, armored. A squad. She turned and started walking, fast but composed. Threx loped beside her, his cybernetics humming in anticipation. The corridor narrowed, walls tight and stained, the kind of place meant for transferring dangerous cargo, not housing it. At the next junction, 3 Krell guards waited with plasma rifles and grim purpose. One barked a warning. Threx didn't stop. The first shot missed. The second hit Threx in the flank. He barely flinched. Elara threw herself forward, a roll more instinct than decision. As she rose, Threx launched. The first guard didn't have time to scream. Metal and flesh collided with a sound like splintering bone. The other two turned to run. Threx was faster. Elara didn't watch. She'd seen the aftermath enough times. She pried a rifle from the twitching hand of the nearest corpse and checked its charge. 3 rounds. It would have to do. She moved forward, boots splashing through cooling blood. A security node blinked above the next door, waiting for a command. She stared into it, calm. This is Elara Myles, Alpha-level Heliord asset. Authorization Echo 779. Her voice was a knife. The system hesitated. Then, override accepted. The door slid open, revealing a dimly lit corridor flanked by thick doors, containment vaults. Threx padded up beside her, blood soaking the fur along his jawline. He didn't look at her, just waited. These cells, they're like yours, she said quietly. Other projects, other failures. A screen on the wall flickered to life. Data streamed across. Species codes, timestamps, neural compression patterns. She scrolled through them with a flick of her eyes, filtering for anything familiar. 2 files caught her breath. One labeled Zeta 14, the other Borealis Unit 3. Both were from the old days. Her days. They kept them, she murmured. Repurposed them. She turned to Threx. We don't leave them here. He huffed in agreement. A quick bypass, and the first vault hissed open. The thing inside stirred. Hulking, quadruped, its features distorted by stasis. Not a wolf, not a soldier. Something hybrid, broken, beautiful. She stepped back as its eyes opened. Recognition flared. Threx made a sound between a growl and a whimper. It remembers, Elara said. They all do. The second vault took longer. Older encryption, buried beneath 3 layers of alien code. But she cracked it. As the door parted, Borealis Unit 3 emerged, feline and serpentine, sleek with bioarmor grafted to its frame. It stepped past her without hesitation and settled behind Threx, lowering its head in deference. The corridor pulsed with energy now. 3 beings that were never meant to be reunited. Elara felt the air shift. They'll send everything they have now, she said. A shriek echoed from above, high-pitched and metallic. Threx snarled. The others bristled. They know what's loose. Her voice was steady. Good. They moved together now, a unit. The hall widened, feeding into the central artery of the complex. Ahead, bulkhead doors began to close, automated lockdown. Elara sprinted. The beasts thundered beside her. She dove under the narrowing gap, rolled, came up firing. The rifle buzzed once, twice, then died. But bought her time. The override panel blinked red. She slammed her palm onto it, linked her neural node. Processing. Gunfire roared behind her. Alien weapons. Streaks of white-hot plasma lashing past. Threx barreled through the hail, smashing the gunners into the walls. Borealis leapt, silent and vicious, eviscerating with surgical precision. Override accepted. The doors reversed, stuttering open. Elara shouted over the noise. 3 levels up. Hangar deck. They climbed, floor by floor, carving a path of blood and panic. Sirens screamed now, system-wide, as more beasts awakened behind them. Doors unlocked in their wake. Not all would follow, but some would. Enough. By the time they reached the hangar access, Elara could barely breathe. Her head throbbed from overusing the link. Threx nudged her side, urging her forward. A familiar voice echoed from the comms panel above the hangar gate. It was the silver-banded alien again. Calm this time. Calculated. Dr. Myles, you can still stop this. Come back to the lab. Share what you know. Help us rebuild the Helior Initiative with proper oversight. She stepped closer, staring into the lens. You desecrated everything we built. You turned sentient weapons into experiments. And you want my help. Her voice turned cold. You're not getting a program. You're getting a reckoning. She shot the panel. Sparks burst. The voice died. Behind her, The hangar doors split open, and beyond them, against the stars, the unmistakable silhouette of a human stealth cruiser shimmered into view. Elara smiled, blood in her teeth. They came. The hangar's atmosphere shields shimmered as the stealth cruiser decloaked, casting a ripple of energy through the chamber. Its matte black hull bore no insignia, no signal codes, only the stark design of human ingenuity, built for speed and precision. A forward ramp extended with quiet efficiency, and from within, a dozen figures emerged in light exo-armor, weapons raised, movements disciplined. Elara stepped forward first, her hands lifted to show she was unarmed, though the blood soaked in her sleeves told a different story. The lead soldier hesitated only briefly before lowering his rifle. "Dr. Myles," he said, his voice crackling through the helmet comms. "We received your signal. Thought it was a ghost trace." "Not a ghost," she replied. "Just someone they buried alive." Behind her, Threx emerged, silent and imposing, his eyes alert to every angle. The Borealis unit padded beside him, twitching with residual adrenaline. More of the newly awakened hybrids trickled in behind them, stragglers from the complex, now collapsing into panic and confusion. The soldiers surveyed them warily. "You're bringing those?" "They're not weapons," Elara said. "They're survivors." He nodded once, tight and uncertain, and signaled the others. The boarding team moved to secure the perimeter while the first group escorted Elara and the others inside. As the ramp sealed behind them, the hangar was already beginning to flood with containment gas. Krell protocol for asset loss. They had escaped by seconds. Inside the ship, lights dimmed to combat readiness as systems scanned the new arrivals. The bridge was small, efficient, with a command console manned by a woman in a dark operations jacket. She turned as Elara approached, sharp-featured and clearly in charge. "You're a hard woman to find," the commander said. "I wasn't hiding," Elara replied. "I was forgotten." A flicker of recognition passed between them. Elara didn't offer her name again. She didn't need to. "Name's Dina Rourke," the commander said. "Fleet Recon. We've been monitoring Krell installations for rogue biotech programs. We thought the Heliord archive was dead." "It is," Elara said. "What they build is something else entirely. A corruption." Rourke's eyes moved to Threx, who stood silently behind her. "And him." He was the first, and the last. Silence settled between them. Then, "Where do we go?" Elara didn't answer right away. She looked out the viewport as the cruiser began to lift, rotating away from the station, now flashing with containment alerts and atmospheric leakage. "There's a cache node in the Veil Nebula," she said finally. "Pre-fall tech, encrypted archives. If I can access it, I can dismantle what they're doing, piece by piece." Rourke nodded once and turned to her pilot. "Plot a course. Maximum stealth. No relay beacons." The ship surged forward, slipping back into cloak. In the med bay, Elara stood over Threx as the diagnostic drone scanned him. Burn marks along his flank. Hairline fractures in 2 augmented bones. Neuralink strain at 41%. Too high. She keyed in a sedative override and rested a hand gently along his ribs. He huffed, weary but present. She caught his gaze. "You don't have to fight anymore," she said quietly. "We're out." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. They weren't out. They were ahead, just barely. And whatever was chasing them, Krell, the initiative remnants, or something worse, wouldn't stop. Not now. Not after seeing what she'd reawakened. She moved to the lab terminal in the adjacent room and began uploading her neural records. Link logs, memory caches, biosync data from Threx and the others. Each line of code was another thread in the tapestry the Krell had tried to destroy. As the upload progressed, she decrypted what she could. Patterns emerged. Control tags embedded deep in the hybrid protocols. Failsafes tied to Krell command frequencies. And then a new string, Foreign, unfamiliar. It was not Krell, not human either. A third pattern. She leaned closer. Encrypted sublayer, she murmured. They weren't just modifying us. They were adapting something. The realization slid cold across her spine. Dina appeared in the doorway. You're seeing it too. Elara turned. You knew. We intercepted a Krell broadcast last cycle. Fragmented data. They've been splicing elements from an unknown origin into their experiments. Something they found beyond the trade rim. Beyond the rim? Elara's voice went tight. That's off-limits space. Not to them, Dina said. We think they made contact. The implications hit hard. Threx and the others hadn't just been turned into weapons. They were prototypes for a new kind of host. The Krell weren't just continuing helioward science. They were fusing it with alien influence. And Elara had just set their creations free. We'll have to find the origin source, she said. Before they do. Dina crossed her arms. What happens if we can't? Elara stared at the growing stream of alien code on the screen. Still partially encrypted. Still unreadable. Her voice was low but unwavering. Then humanity won't recognize itself when this war ends. The ship rumbled faintly. Nothing critical, just turbulence in the quantum drive. But it felt like the universe shifting beneath her feet. She closed the terminal, encrypted the files, and turned back toward the medbay. Threx was already asleep, his breathing steady, but his body twitched beneath the sedation. Memories, pain, instincts sharpened by years of violence. She stood over him for a moment, then knelt beside him, one hand resting on his metal-plated paw. I'll fix this, she whispered. For all of you. Behind her, Borealis unit. 3 watched silently from the shadows. No growl. No movement. Just waiting. As if they understood what she had promised. As if they believed it.